Delta flight attendant goes viral with this photo. It was supposed to be just another early morning flight from Charlotte to New York City, until one flight attendant's unexpected gesture changed everything. A single photo caught the moment, and the world couldn't look away. It was January 14th, an early morning like any other at Charlotte Douglas International Airport. The terminal buzzed with activity, hurried footsteps, the faint hum of announcements, and the occasional rustle of boarding passes. The air carried a peculiar quietness, a calm before the storm, as passengers prepared for Delta Flight 1923, bound for New York City. The flight was ordinary, yet every seat carried a story. For many, it was just another hop between cities. But for a few, it was a leap of faith. The cabin, bathed in the gentle glow of ambient lighting, smelled faintly of freshly brewed coffee, a comforting aroma masking the nervous tension of early morning travelers. Outside, the horizon painted itself in soft strokes of pink and orange, a reminder that even the busiest airports have their moments of serenity. Among the bustling crew stood Dean Shannon, a 26-year-old with a spark in his eye and a purpose in his step. Just 3 months into his career as a flight attendant, Dean had already earned a reputation for his meticulous attention to detail and unwavering warmth. He wasn't just another airline employee. He was a guardian of experiences, committed to ensuring each passenger felt seen and safe. Dean's journey to the skies was anything but typical. Before donning the crisp Delta uniform, he had spent years working in boutique hotels, crafting impeccable experiences for guests. His mother and older sister, both nurses, had taught him the art of empathy, how to read a person's unspoken fears and offer comfort without waiting for a plea. Their stories of long nights in hospital wards, holding hands of strangers, had shaped Dean's belief. Kindness wasn't optional, it was essential. As he stepped onto the aircraft that morning, Dean felt an undercurrent of excitement. He always did. Every flight was a chance to do more than serve drinks or demonstrate safety procedures. It was a chance to connect. It happened during his pre-flight walkthrough. Dean moved methodically down the aisle, checking seatbelts, luggage, and ensuring passengers were ready for takeoff. His practiced gaze flickered to a woman seated in 14A. Her posture was stiff, her knuckles pale as they gripped the armrests. Her eyes darted toward the window, but lingered there just long enough to betray her unease. Something wasn't right. She was in her mid-40s, dressed modestly in a navy cardigan and scarf, her face shadowed by an expression of dread. Dean's instincts kicked in. Years in hospitality had taught him to recognize distress even in its quietest forms. But this was different. It wasn't just pre-flight jitters. Her fear clung to the air around her, palpable enough for Dean to pause. The question gnawed at him. Should he intervene? Or was it better to focus on the routine tasks at hand? After all, it wasn't his job to solve every personal issue that boarded his flight. But then again, wasn't it? Dean lingered for a moment, adjusting his tie absent-mindedly, his heart caught in a silent debate. It would have been easy to move on. Passengers had anxieties all the time, and most handled them quietly. But something about this woman compelled him to stay. The way her fingers trembled ever so slightly, the silent scream in her downcast eyes, it was as though she was begging for help without uttering a single word. Dean took a deep breath, glancing over his shoulder to ensure the aisle was clear. He knelt beside her seat, a calm smile softening his features. "Good morning, ma'am," he began, his voice low and steady, a stark contrast to the hum of the overhead fans. "You look a little uneasy. Is there anything I can do to help?" Her head turned toward him, startled. For a moment, it seemed as though she might brush him off. But then her grip on the armrest loosened slightly, and her lips parted as if she wanted to speak, but couldn't find the words. Dean waited. He had learned the power of silence, how it could coax someone to let their guard down. What he didn't know was that this moment, this fleeting act of kindness, would ripple far beyond the confines of Flight 1923. Linda Parker sat frozen in seat 14A, her fingers wrapped so tightly around the armrest that her knuckles had turned an unsettling shade of white. She was 45 years old, yet in that moment, she felt like a helpless child, vulnerable, trapped, and completely at the mercy of forces beyond her control. This wasn't just a fear of flying. It was the fear of the unknown, the fear of a past trauma replaying itself in the air. Linda hadn't set foot on a plane in over a decade. The last time she did, it had been a disaster, a turbulent flight that had left her shaken to her core. The sudden jolts, the oxygen masks dropping from the ceiling, the deafening roar of the engines. Those memories still haunted her, whispering insidious doubts every time she even considered traveling by air. And now, as she stared out the window at the bustling Charlotte tarmac, those doubts returned with a vengeance. What if something goes wrong? What if the engines fail midair? What if I lose control of myself? Her heart pounded erratically, a rapid staccato that only she could hear. A bead of sweat trickled down her temple as she took shallow, ragged breaths, trying to convince herself that everything would be fine. But logic wasn't strong enough to combat fear, and it gripped her with an iron fist. She glanced around nervously, searching for an anchor, anyone, to pull her back from the edge. That's when she saw him. Dean Shannon had been observing Linda from the corner of his eye, sensing the invisible weight pressing down on her. He'd seen it before, the restless tapping of fingers, the shallow breathing, the distant, unfocused gaze. He knew fear when he saw it. But what set Dean apart from others was his instinct to act. Most flight attendants would have moved on, assuming it was just a nervous traveler who would eventually settle down. But Dean knew better. Instead of continuing his pre-flight checks, he made a split-second decision. With quiet confidence, he walked over and crouched beside Linda's seat, offering a smile that was neither forced nor obligatory. It was genuine. The kind of smile that said, "I'm here, and you're not alone." "Morning, ma'am," he said softly, his voice carrying the warmth of a reassuring embrace. "First time flying?" Linda swallowed hard, her throat dry. "Not exactly," she murmured, her voice barely audible. Dean caught the tremble in her tone and nodded knowingly. "It's okay," he said. "Flying can be a little unsettling, even for the most experienced travelers. But I promise, you're in good hands." The way he spoke, calm, steady, and utterly unhurried, immediately took the edge off her anxiety. He wasn't just saying it to make her feel better. He meant it. Linda exhaled shakily and looked at him, studying his face for any sign of insincerity. She found none. "It's been 10 years since my last flight," she admitted, her eyes darting toward the window again. "It didn't go well?" Dean settled onto the armrest beside her, adopting a relaxed posture, as if they were old friends catching up. "Want to tell me about it?" he asked, his tone light but encouraging. She hesitated, then nodded. "There was turbulence. Bad turbulence. The plane dropped so suddenly that I thought it was over." Dean nodded empathetically. "Turbulence can be scary, no doubt. But it's actually a lot like driving over potholes. Annoying, but totally normal. The plane is built to handle it." Linda chuckled nervously. "Potholes, huh? Never thought of it that way." Dean grinned. "Trust me, I've been asked all kinds of questions over the past 3 months. Once, a passenger actually asked me if pilots ever fall asleep mid-flight." He shook his head playfully. "Spoiler alert, they don't." Linda laughed, a small, tentative sound, but it was a victory nonetheless. The tension in her shoulders loosened just a little. Dean knew that humor alone wouldn't completely erase her anxiety. He needed to go the extra mile. "How about this?" he suggested. "Let me grab you something to help you relax a bit." A few moments later, he returned with a mimosa, placing it gently on her tray table. "Just a little something to take the edge off," he said with a wink. Linda hesitated, but eventually took a sip, the cool citrus tang mingling with the faint hum of the engines. For the first time, she allowed herself to take a deep breath. "Now," Dean continued, "I'm going to teach you a little trick. It's called the 4-7-8 breathing technique. Breathe in for 4 seconds, hold it for 7, and then slowly exhale for 8. Try it with me." She followed his lead, and within minutes, her breathing had evened out. "Feeling better?" Dean asked gently. Linda nodded, a small but genuine smile tugging at her lips. "A little. Thank you." It wasn't just Linda who noticed. Passengers seated nearby had been quietly observing the interaction, their expressions softening as they witnessed the simple act of kindness unfold. A woman across the aisle smiled warmly, A man a few rows back gave an approving nod. For a moment, the entire atmosphere of the cabin shifted. The sterile, transactional nature of air travel dissolved into something more human, more connected. Linda, now visibly more relaxed, found herself opening up. She chatted with Dean about her favorite travel destinations, her hopes of overcoming this fear, and perhaps, one day, flying without the looming sense of dread. Dean, ever patient, listened intently, offering words of encouragement and affirmation. It wasn't about solving her fear entirely. It was about giving her the tools to face it one small step at a time. By the time the captain announced their approach into New York City, Linda felt like a different person. Her grip on the armrests had loosened, her heartbeat steady. As the wheels touched down smoothly on the tarmac, she turned to Dean with grateful eyes. "I think I can do this again," she whispered. Dean gave her a reassuring squeeze on the shoulder. "You absolutely can." What started as a moment of crippling anxiety had turned into a profound encounter, one that reminded Linda, and perhaps everyone on board, that sometimes all it takes is a little kindness to set things right. As the plane cruised steadily at 35,000 feet, an unsuspecting passenger seated a few rows behind Linda discreetly snapped a photo. The image captured a scene so simple, yet so profound. Dean Shannon, kneeling beside Linda, holding her hand with a reassuring smile as she listened intently, visibly calmer than before. The passenger, a frequent flyer and social media enthusiast, was moved by what they witnessed. They uploaded the photo to Twitter with the caption, "This is what the world needs more of, simple kindness." The response was instantaneous. Within minutes, the photo was retweeted by hundreds. The image, accompanied by a short thread detailing Dean's act of compassion, struck a chord with people across the world. Stories flooded in. Passengers who had experienced fear, strangers who had extended a hand in their time of need, and even fellow flight attendants who resonated deeply with the moment. By the time Flight 1923 landed in New York City, the post had already garnered thousands of likes and shares. Major social media accounts began picking up the story, tagging Delta Airlines and praising their employees for going above and beyond. Within hours, the story was everywhere: Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and even trending on Twitter under hashtags like Kindness in the Air and Delta Cares. Social media was flooded with heartfelt comments. "Flying has always terrified me. If I had a flight attendant like Dean, maybe I wouldn't be so scared." In a world filled with negativity, it's stories like these that restore faith in humanity. We need more Deans in this world. Soon, mainstream news outlets caught wind of the viral sensation. CNN, BBC, and the New York Times ran features under headlines like, "Flight attendant's simple act of kindness wins the internet." The viral photo that's melting hearts everywhere. Delta Airlines' official social media accounts also shared the story, captioning it, "At Delta, our people make all the difference. Thank you, Dean, for showing the world what true hospitality looks like." But it wasn't just the media attention. There was an emotional resonance that resonated deeply with people. Passengers who had once experienced crippling flight anxiety commented about how such an act could have made a world of difference during their own journeys. Some even went as far as saying the story encouraged them to give flying another chance. News of Dean's act of kindness quickly reached Delta's corporate headquarters in Atlanta. The airline, known for emphasizing customer service, wasted no time in recognizing their young flight attendant. A day after the story broke, Dean received an email from Delta's senior management requesting a meeting. The following week, in a surprise ceremony at the airport, Delta executives awarded him the Service Excellence Award, an honor given to employees who go beyond their duties to make a significant impact. At the award presentation, Dean stood humbly in front of his colleagues and reporters, wearing his signature smile. When asked how he felt about the recognition, he simply said, "I just did what I think anyone would do. Sometimes people just need someone to listen, someone to care." His humility only made the story resonate further. Dean's actions were not driven by the hope of recognition, but by an innate sense of compassion. Delta executives praised him not only for his work ethic, but for embodying the airline's core values. But the impact didn't end there. Linda Parker, The once nervous flyer in seat 14A later wrote a heartfelt letter to Delta Airlines and Dean, expressing how his kindness had transformed her relationship with flying. "Dean, I want you to know that because of you, I no longer fear flying. I boarded that plane with my heart pounding, terrified. But your kindness, your patience, changed everything. Thank you for showing me that the skies aren't so scary after all." Her letter, posted on Delta's website and shared across social media, inspired countless others facing similar fears. Dean's story also sparked conversations within the airline industry. Other airlines began highlighting similar moments of kindness among their staff, and flight attendant training programs started incorporating emotional intelligence and passenger empathy modules based on Dean's experience. Even among Dean's fellow crew members, his actions set a new standard. Several of his colleagues reached out to him personally, saying they were inspired to engage with passengers more meaningfully. "I've always thought we were just here for safety," one flight attendant admitted, "but you reminded me that we're also here to make people feel safe in more ways than one." The virality of Dean's act opened unexpected doors. He was invited to speak at aviation industry events, sharing his experience and emphasizing the importance of compassion in customer service roles. He even considered starting an initiative within Delta, a compassion crew, that would focus on providing support to nervous flyers and ensuring they had someone to lean on during their journey. In interviews, Dean repeatedly stressed that the recognition wasn't what mattered most. What mattered was that the world had seen how powerful simple acts of kindness could be. "If my story encourages just one person to offer kindness to someone who needs it, then it's all worth it," he said during a TV appearance. The story of Dean and Linda resonated not just because of its simplicity, but because it highlighted a truth we often forget in the hustle of life. Compassion costs nothing, yet its value is immeasurable. Every passenger, every seat on an aircraft, carries a story, fears, hopes, and uncertainties. And sometimes, all it takes is a kind word, a listening ear, and a gentle touch to turn someone's journey from terrifying to transformative. Dean Shannon never sought fame. He simply wanted to help a woman through her fear. But in doing so, he reminded the world that true service is about human connection. As Flight 1923 soared through the skies that morning, it carried more than just passengers. It carried a message that kindness, no matter how small, has the power to uplift, to heal, and to inspire. In a world that often feels rushed and indifferent, Dean Shannon's story stands as a gentle reminder of the transformative power of simple kindness. It wasn't a grand gesture. There were no cameras, no awards in mind, just a young flight attendant offering reassurance to a nervous passenger. And yet, that one small act changed the course of Linda Parker's flight experience, and perhaps even her life. This story proves an undeniable truth. A single moment of kindness can reshape an entire experience. It's not always about following a script or sticking to procedures. True customer service, whether in the air or on the ground, is about recognizing when someone needs a little extra care and taking the time to offer it. It's about patience, empathy, and the willingness to go beyond what's required, qualities that transform a routine job into an extraordinary one. Linda boarded that flight feeling isolated in her fear, but she left feeling seen, heard, and valued, all thanks to a few words, a listening ear, and an understanding heart. If such a small moment could make such a big difference for one person, imagine the impact if we all extended the same compassion in our everyday lives. Dean's story resonates beyond the airline industry. It's a lesson for anyone, in any field, or simply in everyday interactions. You never know what someone is going through. Perhaps the person sitting next to you on the bus, the colleague at work, or even the stranger at the grocery store is silently battling their own anxieties, fears, or hardships. A kind word, a warm smile, or simply taking the time to ask, "Are you okay?" might mean the world to them. Here's how to do. Look beyond the surface. People often carry invisible burdens. A little patience and attention can help alleviate those struggles. Small actions matter. Whether it's holding a door open, offering words of encouragement, or simply listening, kindness doesn't have to be elaborate to be impactful. Compassion is contagious. Dean's act of kindness sparked a wave of positivity. When you show kindness, you inspire others to do the same. The world can sometimes feel like a harsh place, but each of us has the power to make it better, one small act of kindness at a time. When Dean was interviewed after the viral sensation, his words were simple yet profound. "I didn't do anything extraordinary. I just did what I hope anyone would do. Be there for someone who needed a little help." Kindness doesn't have to be grand. It just has to be genuine. His message is clear. Kindness is accessible to everyone. You don't need a special occasion or a specific role to make a difference. Whether you're a flight attendant, a student, a doctor, or a stranger passing by, a simple act of empathy can turn someone's day around. What seems small to you might be life-changing to someone else. Dean's humility serves as a reminder that true kindness is never about seeking recognition. It's about acting from the heart. Now, he encourages everyone who hears his story to pass it on. If the story inspired you, share it. Tell someone. And most importantly, the next time you see someone struggling, be their Dean Shannon. The story of Dean and Linda reminds us that kindness knows no boundaries. Whether it's 35,000 feet in the air or right here on the ground, we all have the power to make a difference. So the next time you see someone struggling, whether it's a nervous flyer, a coworker under pressure, or even a stranger on the street, take a moment. Offer a smile. Extend a hand. Listen. Because at the end of the day, it's not just about reaching our destination. It's about making the journey a little easier for everyone we meet along the way. The world needs more Deans. Will you be one?